About 5 years ago, I discovered that I had cancer, and from a doctor of mine found it for me, a friend of mine, Dr. Jim Bolin, very good gentleman I've known for many years, and he's a very popular doctor in Colorado. He was my former roommate, and I owe him my life. He's the one who helped find it. But one thing led to another, and it ended up with non-Hodgkin lymphoma and to adenocarcinoma of the small intestine. And literally before then, I never used cannabis for anything in my entire life. But as Dr. Bolin told me, he says, you might run into trouble down the road with some of the treatments that you're going to be going through, and this might be a good thing to help you with your nausea and other ailments that might come along. And I spent the better part of 4 years researching and developing different types of cannabis oils and hemp oils, etc., and trying different means of non-carcinogenic means of ingesting the product to help me with my disease, and literally was working from a hospital bed quite often. And when I was out, I was literally like a little mad scientist in the kitchen creating different types of formulas just to try to make something better each time that could work with my system.
And those formulas gave you some relief, and
yes.
maybe you started to put on a small amount of weight. Was that accurate?
Yeah, that was accurate for then. Right now, as it stands, is that, it's tough to do with, back then, because I was always in the hospital, always going through treatment, and it would counteract the effects. I mean, it could have been far worse if I wasn't using the hemp oils and cannabis therapy in conjunction with my chemotherapies and surgeries and everything else. But now, it was a couple years ago, I met Matt and Ralph at one of the local, it was a medicinal cannabis professionals conference. It wasn't really a public conference, and we talked, and I talked with Bucky Miner from, what's the lab company there? Full Spectrum Labs. And talked to him about what I was doing, and then he introduced me to Ralph and Matt, and we talked about how they were doing things and different methods and ideology to come together to help patients that are truly in need. And as I got to try some of their products, I found out that the measured dosing and the quality of the dosing helped me a great deal get through some of the toughest times in my life, through the clinical trials, the surgeries, and everything. And it was all based on non-carcinogenic means of administering this type of medication. Hemp oils, the vaporizer, the cannatabs, etc. The same things I were working on, they were far more advanced than I was on this issue, and it worked out very well.
Let me pause you for just 1 second. So for people who aren't as familiar with this subject as Bruce that might have cancer, there's a lot of homebrew recipes that are out there by like Rick Simpson in Canada that can tell you how to make these extracts of THC, and some of them work pretty well for people. However, one of the things that the company that Bruce mentioned, Organolabs, has done from the start, there's one good thing that to borrow from Big Pharma, which is a big scary company, but they have uniform doses. For example, I'm a thyroid patient. I have a slow thyroid, so every day I take one of these, a Synthroid and a Cytomel. Now, someone like me with a little disease like that, it would be crazy to go, well, now it's Tuesday, how much of it should I take today? Of course you're going to take the standard dose. But meanwhile, everyone who was trying to work on their cancer was experimenting all the time. So they had some positive stuff. But now it seems like there's a lot of benefits from a standardized dose. Could you speak to that, Bruce?
Absolutely. A standardized dosing can give you a baseline of where you need to be, and the difference from being, having a psychoactive high or being high, period, or managing your disease, okay? And starting off with the Rick Simpson method of using isopropyl alcohol, cooking down my buds, creating hemp oils, and administering that raw, there were still some issues with the residual taste, and the chlorophyll hasn't been removed, it's not as strong, and you have to take more and more of it.
Wouldn't there also be issues with where to procure the buds from to make the extract from, and how much it would cost, especially if you're not in the medical marijuana state?
If you're not in a medical marijuana state, it's going to be really tough to do, because to make those type of oils, it requires more of the plant. Literally, I've gotten to the point where I was clipping the whole plant down, cutting it up, and cooking the whole plant, not just the buds, even though the buds themselves are a stronger portion if I just wanted to do buds. But in Colorado, where it was legal, I had legal grow. I was able to do this myself, and I literally, I've been a tinkerer my whole life and invented my own grow system, and then I was able to distill the buds down into THC oil that was very, very pure, but it wasn't quite there yet. And those oils worked very well, especially with my GI tract after all the damage that's been done with the chemotherapy medications, and I was very happy just to have that right there.
Mm-hmm.
That got me off of the Percocet, the Vicodin, the Zofran, which was supposed to be anti-nausea medication, and that just made things worse. And then, all the other medications that came along with it, it just wasn't working with my system after 4 years. So I started using just the pure CO2 extracted oils from Organolabs, and saw a great deal of benefits, especially after my last clinical trial. Worked out amazingly. I've gone from 117 pounds, I'm now 157, and that's from May until today.
Okay. And you don't you give Organolabs products a lot of credit for that, but you also have is it an infusion system or an intravenous nutrient system too? So okay. it's not you have to. That's not going to do everything for you. You would recommend people take some nutrients as well?
Yes, I do. I have my own supplements I have to take every morning that I take along with it in my infusion therapy, which is really not new to science at all. It's high doses of pharmaceutical-grade vitamins and nutrients that can only be administered intravenously. You can't take them orally or any other way because they're such high dosage of, in strength. But also, as we found out, in conjunction, it works with cannabis therapies very, very well. And it worked out very well so far. And a great deal of study has been monitoring of me for the last couple of years on this issue, as I've been taking my cannabis oils and going along with my infusion therapies at the same time. It's worked out very well for me so far. And I have the blood test and everything that can show where I started and where I'm at now.
Well, hopefully we'll be able to put those on Cannabis Commerce too for people to see. That would be great.
I'll volunteer to do that because I understand now as I am a human guinea pig. But if this could bring benefit to other patients, I'm all for that.
Okay, well, great. Now, I've heard you say that you feel that a big pharma, the pharmaceutical companies, are really doing what they can to block publicity and research into cannabis therapy. Is that a suspicion, or do you have evidence of that?
Well, there is evidence of that if you've ever been through a clinical trial. They want to suppress other technologies other than what their bottom line dictates.